We were specifically an app for teenagers to go and buy and sell stock. When Bloomberg had announced in the news, like, oh, I'm committing $1 billion to my presidential campaign, I was like, all right, like, I did pretty well with Yang. If I can scale up what I did with Yang to Bloomberg, you could probably find some good success with that. As you know, Fintech is one of the highest paying customer acquisition costs, highest paying CPMs. So I was like, all right, if I can, figure out the finesse in politics and direct to consumer, how do I try to figure out a finesse in Fintech? Yeah, on a daily basis, I don't know if I can specify the exact number, but it's in like the tens of thousands, right? We're growing between 3,000 to 5,000 users on a daily basis. We're one of like the fastest growing, especially on the younger end, Gen Z Fintech startups.
All right, we have an exciting RazReport today. We have Allan Maman on from Bloom. Bloom is a fintech startup that's taken the world by storm. Allan has a very interesting background. He's worked in fintech. He's worked in doing growth marketing for the likes of Michael Bloomberg, etc. We're going to get right into it. Before we get into what you're doing now, Allan, let's go back to where you were, say, 10 years ago. Give us a little bit of your early days and how you got into this marketing and able to build products that people love.
Yeah, great question, and thank you for having me, Jason. 10 years ago, I would have been 13 years old, so probably an 8th grader. So I didn't really get my full official entrepreneurial start until I was more of a senior in high school. And one of those first ventures was basically being responsible for making fidget spinners go viral. So I had started making fidget spinners in my high school laboratory with my physics teacher, and essentially started selling them in school, and every single kid wanted them. And eventually, when everybody bought them in school, I was like, wait a second, if this can sell really well in this small school, what if I take this online? What if I start scaling this with e-commerce ads and whatnot? So that was like my first official start in terms of doing like an official venture. But since then it's just been a bunch of very random things as you mentioned.
Yeah, and so whatever happened with the fidget spinners? You just like let it wind down? You made a ton of sales for it? Like what ended up happening?
Yeah, so the high level is, the first 6 months were great. We were like the main sellers. Everybody was buying through us. And then eventually China came into play where, injection molding came in and started to really drive the price down. And eventually it started to wind down.
Got it. So that was like high school. After high school, what'd you do?
Yeah, great question. So after high school, my parents basically gave me this ultimatum. They were like, Allan, either you go to college or we're going to kick you out of the house. So I was like, all right, you know what? I have some money from this venture. I'm just going to move down to the city. So I grew up in Westchester, so it's not too far from the city.
Where in Westchester?
Armonk, so I went to Barham Hills High School. Yeah.
Yep.
So moved down to the city by myself. Just got one of those like small, single bedrooms and a 3-bedroom on Facebook Marketplace. And I basically like honed down my skills. And I was like, all right, if I want to make sure.
Did your parents give you money for that, or you had money?
No. Well, yeah. So I had some money from the past, fidget venture that I hadn't already spent on dumb things, right? And I had a small bit of money that I like. Kind of had the conviction in myself. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go figure this out by myself. And that was like the high level. And then essentially I like started to realize, all right, I'm decently okay at business, but I need to hone down my skills, right, at like growth and business and kind of get better. So I started working at a bunch of other, random startups where I can kind of learn a bunch on, other companies' money to some extent, so I wouldn't be risking a lot of my personal capital. And then eventually just started doing a bunch of random gigs, right? So like worked at a direct-to-consumer startup called Nugs, where joined them at a seed company, and they just did a $50 million Series B. I worked for Andrew Yang and Michael Bloomberg for like running their meme campaigns, which I can talk about a little bit more. But yeah, basically just a bunch of really random kind of skills that I would try to teach myself.
So when you worked for Andrew Yang and Michael Bloomberg, who was first? You worked for Bloomberg first or Andrew Yang?
So I worked for Andrew Yang first, and then I did that for a few months, and then eventually just like left it. And then when Bloomberg had announced in the news, like, oh, I'm committing $1 billion to my presidential campaign, I was like, all right, like, I did pretty well with Yang. If I can scale up what I did with Yang to Bloomberg, you could probably find some good success with that.
How did you get to Yang?
Yeah, great question. So with Yang, I just reached out to their campaign via like cold email. They were only a team of about 4 or 5 at the time, so it wasn't like that complicated. The reason how I found him was I just saw him on a friend's Instagram story. Like he was like speaking in some small, classroom for his campaign, very early days. And I was like, wow, if I was a young Asian American, 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and I saw another guy that looked like me running for president, I'd be pretty inspired. So I want to see what I can do to kind of, offer up my skills to a certain extent.
So you were there only for like a few months, but what did you do to help impact the outcome there? Because I do think you had an impact there.
Yeah, so we basically ran all of his like guerrilla marketing when it came to his meme
When you say
campaigns.
we, you or
Yeah, so like myself, one of my earlier partners, and then like a small team of like basically interns. But basically, the high level is we ran all of his like Facebook media ad spend and all of his meme campaigns from that level. So it was just like Andrew is kind of known for being this like presidential meme, right? Not a ton of success in terms of like votes and that stuff, but from an awareness meme point of view, he's definitely well known on that factor. So I think at a very high level we essentially did most of that advertising the first few months before kind of like more higher level kind of people stepped in and the campaign became super serious where they're raking in tens of millions of dollars in donations.
got it, got it. And so, did you know what you were doing there, or you just learned like on the job, going to Reddit forums? Like, how did you really get going doing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So honestly speaking, from the fidget spinner days, we would run a lot of memes on ad pages, or run a lot of ads on meme pages. So I essentially just took the same connections I had from the fidget spinner days and applied them to Andrew, where he would do something funny, we would turn it into a meme. Like for example, this was the time when like the AirPods meme was a big thing, where it's like, oh, if like you're really rich, you own a pair of AirPods. And Andrew was really big on this UBI thing, right, where it's giving everybody a set monthly income. So we kind of put those two things together, made them into a meme, and then we published them on meme pages to kind of pick up on that initial virality.
So when you published that kind of meme on meme pages, were you just publishing them as a free meme, or were you advertising them? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, so it's honestly a mix of how we would do it, right? The thing with campaigns is that you have to be very specific in terms of what you're disclosing when it's an ad and whatnot. So we'd have to find ways around it. So for example, I don't know if you remember seeing, Jason, like the SpongeBob text meme where like every other letter is like capitalized and uncapitalized, so it like looks like really goofy.
Yes.
But for example, yeah, we would make the hashtag sponsored by Michael Bloomberg in like a meme, SpongeBob meme type format, so it would actually look less serious. So like you do have to get very specific in terms of disclosures, but there are some workarounds that you could do to make it seem a little less cringy to some extent.
Got it. Okay, and that was and those things worked. Those
Yeah.
things got attention because no one else was really doing it that way with like sponsored by. Okay, so then you were at Andrew Yang. Then you went to Bloomberg. How long were you working for Bloomberg?
Yeah, so with Bloomberg, the very high level is I joined, and basically, he dropped out pretty early relative to the amount of money that he spent. So I think I was there for like officially speaking 2 months, but I stayed on retainer for roughly a year and a half, specifically working for Hawkfish, which is like his digital agency for like the Democrats specifically. But with Bloomberg, I would say it was basically everything we did with Yang, but at a 10x scale, right? Where they're like, whatever you did with him, we have essentially a ton more resources. We have a ton more like things that we can kind of do and test out. And like one of the memes, for example, that I made ended up going on like Tucker Carlson Tonight, where he was like reacting to it and reviewing, one of the live debate memes.
Got it. So that was probably a great learning period for you.
Yeah, exactly. Like learned a ton, learned how to like communicate too with like the teams, right? You would be on these comms meetings in these war rooms for debate night. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, and then so how long were you at Bloomberg for?
Yeah, so like officially speaking, like a year and a half.
And then from there, is that when you went to Robinhood for some work, or
Essentially, yeah. So, full transparency. Like I said, they kept me on retainer, and I didn't really have to do anything for past that 2 months. So I would just work at a bunch of other random gigs to try to like teach myself skills. So I had like built my own app. I had worked at a social media app in the meanwhile. But yeah, essentially after those 2 or 3 main things. Is when I started to be like, all right, I've already gotten relatively okay at politics. I've gotten relatively okay at growing, companies from a direct to consumer, from a social app level. I want to start getting into fintech, right? Because in marketing, as you know, fintech is one of the highest paying customer acquisition costs, highest paying CPMs. So I was like, all right, if I can, figure out the finesse in politics and direct to consumer, how do I try to figure out a finesse in fintech? As you know, fintech is extremely expensive. So I didn't necessarily want to use my own capital for that like teaching lesson. So I figured, hey, let me go try to work for a bigger fintech company to kind of learn, the ropes, and then eventually starting, doing my own.
So that was your thesis about fintech, the higher CPM, the higher revenue, and that's how you came to Robinhood? Like that's like you're like, okay, this is my thesis. I want to go to like the hottest company in Silicon Valley right now?
Yep, exactly.
So how did that happen then?
Yeah, so basically just started messaging a bunch of like my friends at Bloomberg who were like pretty high up. So Bloomberg had hired all these like huge tech veterans, and I guess because I did an okay job there, they wanted to stay in touch and whatnot. And when I was talking to one of them about how I wanted to look into fintech and I was thinking about doing my own ideas, he was like, "Wait a second, I'm close with somebody who's a CMO at Robinhood. You should chat with her before you go and do anything. Like before you go join any other company, like trust me, talk to her." So when I spoke to her and spoke to the rest of the team, it seemed like they were pretty aligned at having me join. And honestly, yeah, it was a pretty straightforward like interview process and joining. But in terms of my experience there, truthfully speaking, it was just a bunch of really random things. To be honest, like my role was strategy and special operations. So I just worked on like SEVs. So when there would be a huge crisis communication, I would kind of join, figure out what the social response would be to things like that, or like making memes for our CEO. So like Vlad is very well known on like Twitter, especially after the whole GameStop stuff. So we would essentially, or I guess I would make him memes to post when we do new product launches, things like that.
Yeah, I need someone to make me some memes. But wait, so SEVs, what does SEVs stand for?
Great question. So SEV, I think it's like a severe engineering, it's when something breaks in the app or there's like a huge crisis communication. Then there's like SEV, like a SEV 3, SEV 2, SEV 1. And if it's like a 1, it's the most critical. So that's when like everybody needs to be on a call. And truthfully speaking, that was probably one of the more fun things I think I've worked on, where like you're in this kind of similar to Bloomberg, where you're in this war room, right? And they're like, okay, there's these issues happening, how are we going to respond to it, what's the the best process, and I think I just was highly attracted to those. Like it just seemed like a lot of fun to be in, and I think soon enough the comms team was like, oh wait, Allan comes to us when there's a SEV versus a lot of people try to go away when there's a SEV. So I think that was where some of my value was provided.
So you liked during crisis management, you were one that was calm and you wanted to help find the solution versus like run away from the problem.
Yeah, exactly. But I think for now though, with my own company, I think I prefer no crisis comms. But when you're part of something bigger, it's a lot of fun.
Bloomberg, Robinhood, huge company, and how long was your tenure there?
Yeah, so I was there for I want to say 8 months, and basically at around like the 5 to 6 month mark, one of my co-founders had reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, I'm working on this idea for Bloom. I want to see what you think." And basically, eventually, like 2 months after that, I decided, okay, let me just leave Robinhood and go and just join this company and co-found it with these guys versus like staying in Robinhood because I wasn't really learning a ton after those 6 months, right? It's kind of like the same thing. So that I kind of figured, all right, it's time for me to kind of just go out and try my own thing.
Got it. Now, so did your co-founder, or did they start it before you left Robinhood, or did you guys wait and start it together?
We waited to launch it, but the high level is, they had come up with it prior to me joining a few months prior, and then they were looking to kind of grow out the team and actually start hiring people, and they were looking for a third co-founder to come and really focus on growth. So that's where I basically came in, and then we launched it, roughly speaking, about 4 months after I joined.
Got it. So okay, so it's two. You have two other co-founders.
Yes.
Okay. So now we're gonna get into it. So you left Robinhood to start this new venture, and that's when you reached out to me. I think was this early 2022.
Yeah. I think this is late 21, early 22. Yeah.
Okay. So then you may start late 21, but you reached out to me January 22. I see an email here. And you were on to something. So the company's Bloom. Give us like the pitch then, and then have things changed? Well, we're doing this because we're doing like a Fintech week, and we're doing highlights from interviews like this during that week. But let's get what the genesis of the idea was then. Is it the same? Has anything changed?
Yeah, great question. So the origin of it, when I emailed you, we were specifically an app for teenagers to go and buy and sell stocks, right? That was a huge value prop because at the time, if you were a teen and you wanted to kind of start investing, you had to use TD or Fidelity, these more of an older brokerages that these teens genuinely found scary, right? After we spoke to them, because these companies don't really make it, fun when it comes to like explaining what investing is and what buying a stock is. They kind of make it overly complicated. So that was our original value prop, but kind of as we spoke to more and more users and we kind of grew and we launched on the App Store, we started to realize that there was just a bigger hole from a financial literacy point in general, right? If you go and you sign up to Webull or any of these other big brokerages, sure, they have great incentives, you get a free stock when you sign up, but they don't really teach you the basics and fundamentals of investing and what the, truly owning a stock is, what dividends are, what the payouts are like. It's kind of just like, oh, hey, now you can go go and trade. And it's arguable if they do this on purpose because they're incentivized to some extent, right? Because they make money from higher order flow and whatnot. But from our point of view, we just kind of realized, all right, look, there's a lot of young people getting into investing. How do we make sure we're that really good teacher that somebody had when they were younger and really taught them the basics of what they were doing? That way they don't end up in, options debt or taking out credit card loans that they don't fully understand, or, taking out, insanely high, risky loans, or just things in general. So I think our big importance now that we've kind of aligned on is we want to be this financial literacy app for these younger people, not necessarily even teens, but also give them the ability to start investing. So it's an actionable type app.
Got it. So why do you think teens are like not as active, interested in investing as people who are a little bit older or aren't paying attention? Teens are into shoes, into trading cards. Investing sometimes is I guess during the whole run up in COVID, I feel like a lot of teens got into it, but then I sometimes feel like they get in, then they get out. How do you change that?
Yeah, so it's honestly a mix. I think because of the entire COVID thing and the GameStop thing, retail trading, as you know, got massive, right? And because of that, there's always some spillover to teens. While generally speaking, the teens on our app are pretty retentive to a certain extent, and we see a lot of success with them. I think the high levels, there's a lot of friction for a teen to go and sign up, especially prior to Bloom. Kind of like I said, they have to use a Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, a little bit of an older type of brokerage account where they don't fully understand what they're doing. On our app, we can see a very high retention when it comes to teens taking these education modules, going and investing in stocks, and then actually understanding, oh, hey, I own $20 of Tesla. What does that actually mean? What percentage do I own? What, slice of a share do I own from having $20? And I think, historically speaking, if you just gave a teen a stock and you didn't explain what it was, it's not very surprising that they're not super interested in it, because they're just all right, this is just, financial jargon. Whereas when you explain the concepts, then they're more willing to kind of understand and learn.
So why does your app make it so much easier for teens? Do they still have to do the same thing that they would with an older brokerage to open up an account, and how does that all work?
Yeah, so they still have to go through the entire, custodial type flow that their parent needs to do on the KYC end, on approving things. We have parental controls, so certain parents can approve or deny certain trades, or things that are high risk or ETFs only. But the high level is, I think it comes down to a few things. It comes down to interface, right? So I believe our interface is just way cleaner than a lot of these other platforms. And, we've spoken to these teens about this, and they've verified it to some extent. And, the second part is we try to incentivize them to a certain level, right? So for example, when you take education modules on our app, you get these things called OINKs. And OINKs are our currency.
You call them points, or what'd you call them?
OINKs, OINKS.
Okay, OINKs. Okay.
So if you take a module and you get everything correct, you get 100 OINKs, right? And you can then use those OINKs in our arcade in our app called OINK Hub. That you can then go and play stock games with them. You can do virtual investing. You can do things where you can redeem free stocks with those OINKs. So we try to do these things to really incentivize these teens, where it's oh hey, this isn't just a boring textbook that you're going to read, because no teen wants to go and read a textbook, right? But if you start to gamify it and make it really retentive from that experience, then teens really start to love it and start to really get addicted to it.
So the people that join the app, are you seeing heavy engagement?
Yeah, we're seeing really, really high engagement and retentive experience, especially, once their foot's in the door and they, get that KYC approved, their retention numbers are really high.
I'm guessing this, teens, so the average account size is on the smaller side?
Yeah, definitely on the smaller side. So we honestly see a mix of we'll have some accounts where the parents will deposit $20 a week for their allowance, right? And then we'll have some accounts that it'll be, relatively high net worth individuals that have their teens with 10 or 20 grand. We even have some cases where, we'll get emails of oh, hey, why can't I sign up? Or why can't my teen sign up? Because the person is the CEO of a public company. And because of the specific KYC rules and things like that, we just can't let them on. So, it's honestly a mix of who comes on, but kind of like I said, we have started to expand more outside of the teen sphere and more into just the 13 to 25-year-olds, and we're seeing a lot of success with just all of those age cohorts.
Okay, and the key to your app, Bloom's app, is the educational components and gamifying it to answer questions and things like that. And then, is there competitions as well, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have some very basic competitions where it's a stock tournament, right? So you choose on a list of stocks. We run it back from 10 years ago, and then whoever wins gets the most amount of OINKs. So we have things like that to make it more social and fun. But yeah, I think the high level it's a mix of both, right, Jason? Because if it's just the game, it's not as fun because you're taking these modules, you're playing these games, but it's less actionable because you then have to go to another brokerage to go and invest. But I think because we have these two parts to it is what really complements each other and makes the app in whole really well.
Yeah, and so can you give us like a picture of like how many like numbers that have joined and how it's doing growth and where you guys are at?
Yeah, great question. So, since you referenced the original email when I sent it to you, late 2021, early 2022, that's when we launched in early 2022. Since then, I believe we have over 800,000 users on our app. It's like a very highly retentive experience. Like I said, like we have a lot of order flow. We have a lot of kids taking modules. I think each week we have like probably between 60 to 80,000 education lessons being taken. It's honestly like a huge mix. Like we have other things in our app where, I don't know if you remember playing like the cookie clicker game, but that was a big thing a few years ago where kids would just tap their iPhone screen and they'd get, cookies from tapping it. But we launched one of those like 3 days ago, and it has over like 2 million clicks on it. And kids are then using those oinks to play in the tournaments in the games.
A cookie shows up on your, like an actual physical cookie?
Like no. It's a virtual cookie.
No,
yeah.
I know. No, but it's a virtual cookie, but it's like not like a cookie that you put in web code. It's like it looks like a cookie, and it's like you tap it to get more cookies. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. But in this case, instead of cookies, it's oinks, and then kids will then click on this thing for fun, and then they'll go spend those oinks on one of our games, right, and use that to kind of learn. So it's like honestly a mix, but we're working on really shipping out these really retentive experiences that kids really enjoy doing, and it's like if a kid's tired of taking modules, they can go just click on their screen, and so far it's been working really well.
Got it. And so these cookies allow them to consume, you said, more games? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so in this case, right, the cookies are oinks, and then they can then spend those oinks on those tournaments that we were talking about, or any of the other games that we have in our app.
So how many people will play in a tournament?
Yeah, so it honestly depends on a week-by-week basis, but it's in the thousands of number. It honestly varies on each week we'll have a higher prize or things like that, or there'll be different stocks and whatnot.
Okay. All right. So that's it's getting that high engagement. And so you said about 800,000 people have joined. So how many people log in daily?
Yeah, on a daily basis, I don't know if I can specify the exact number, but it's in like the tens of thousands, right? We're growing between 3,000 to 5,000 users on a daily basis. We're one of the fastest growing, especially on the younger end, Gen Z fintech startups. I believe I think this morning I checked, we were like top 30 or top 40 in the charts. I think I sent you a few of the screenshots.
Got it. And you guys, are you buying a lot of ads to get people to hear about it, or is it mostly word of mouth? How is the growth for Bloom happening?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's honestly a bit of mix, right? So it's not really one or the other. It's kind of like we'll do a lot of paid ads, or we'll do a lot of sponsorships, and then with that, people will sign up. They'll see that it's fun. They'll invite their friends, and it's kind of just like a whole trickle down type of approach when it comes to growth.
So it's a lot of social sharing and stuff here and there. It's not like
exactly.
I know you have your memes experience and all that kind of stuff. So now the question, people listening to this story of a fast-growing company in the fintech space, there's, arguably in this space where during COVID everyone was trading and there's been a slowdown since then, your company is not seeing a slowdown. So then the next question is, what about raising more money or raising money? Where are you at there? What do you, how's that going?
For sure, it's a great question. So I think, at a very high level, my, main focus as a CEO is making sure that our company does not necessarily need to depend on raising money, right? I think it's very important to have the option to, where if you want to, you can, but I feel like being forced to raise money is not a position that you want to be in, right? Because you have the least amount of leverage. So because of that, we've been pretty revenue focused, right, in the past few months. So for context, we have like 7 figures in annual recurring revenue as a company. We're not super far away from being a profitable or default alive as it's described in Silicon Valley. So I think it honestly depends on the market and what we think we could do if we do raise money, and we can kind of scale it up. But I think most importantly, I think the best answer to your question is I need to make sure that we do not need to rely on raising money if that were to even be a question for us.
So the way you guys make money, is it through subscriptions, trading revenue? How do you make money?
Exactly, yeah. So we charge no fees on trading or anything like that, but we charge a subscription fee. So either parents pay a monthly fee or a yearly fee, or someone that's 18 or 20 years old just pays a monthly fee. And the fee honestly varies based on a week-by-week test, right? Sometimes we'll do a lot of annual billing up front, sometimes we'll do monthly billing, but there are still a lot of free options that people can use on the app without paying.
Okay. And do you guys, you don't have to say if you don't want to, do you guys use Apex for the back-end stuff?
Yeah, we use Alpaca Securities.
Alpaca, okay, so that's a competitor to Apex. So that's they're a client of ours. We're fans of them. I remember the day they started, reached out to me way back when. Good group. They've been to our Fintech Deal Day events, which we're having, I guess, in November. Maybe you'll be able to make it to it. Alpaca should be there. It's in New York. I forget the venue, but I know it's in November. Our Fintech Deal Day. We do Fintech Awards and do Fintech Deal Day. So so you're growing. How many people is the team now?
We're only a team of 8 right now, so we keep it very lean. Kind of like I said, we want to focus on making sure that we're not burning too much money and whatnot to some extent.
No, yeah. Sometimes more people, more problems, and when you're smaller, you can get more done, and people know if they don't do it, then it won't happen.
Exactly.
So we've gone through where we were a team of 3, 4, 8, 170, then 130. So a bigger number doesn't necessarily mean a better outcome. I guess is what I would say.
Absolutely.
So we've seen a lot of like day in the life TikToks of like big company CEOs. What's the day in the life for you, Allan?
Yeah, great question. So, obviously it varies depending on the week and how much stuff we have to deal with at work. But, high level is, I'm up 6, 7-ish, go for a run, take the dog out on a walk. I have a 2-year-old Cavapoo sitting next to me on the floor.
Wait, you have wait, how old?
Yeah,
2-year-old?
2-year-old, Togo.
Yeah, can you hold up?
Yeah, let me grab him. He's, I just took him to the dog park, so he's...
Yeah, what's his name?
Togo. Togo. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's a very fuzzy boy. But he's probably
He's not that small.
Yeah, he's 20 pounds, about 22 pounds. Yeah.
We have a Shih Tzu who's like 8 pounds.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I feel like that's a lot, easier maintenance to some extent because this guy I have to like tire him out every day.
Yeah, I hear you, and you have to go outside. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's they're fun dogs though. Is that one a cuddler?
Yeah, definitely. He's a cuddler, big separation anxiety type of thing. But I think as someone who has a lot of work to do on a daily basis, I think it's a really good disconnect, right? Where I take him on a walk, he plays with other dogs. It's a very straightforward type thing where you kind of have to get in this routine. Otherwise, he's just gonna pee and poop in the house.
Okay, so wait, you were doing a day in the life. So you take the dog for the walk, and then what else do you got going?
Take dog for the walk, and then after that, it's basically straight to the office. Working till probably 7 or 8. I'll take him to the park in between it. We specifically chose an office near Flatiron because he goes to Madison Square Park and runs around there a lot. So, in between meetings, I'll take him in and out. And then usually, sometimes there'll be a dinner or, some sort of founder tech thing in New York City that I'll stop by. But for the most part, yeah, it's really just wake up, exercise, dog walks, and then, work for the rest of it.
Got it. And do you guys have a WeWork, or what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. So we have one of those shared WeWorks. We have 4 of our team members are in the city, so it's pretty nice. And everybody just kind of comes in. We all have lunch together. We eat together. It's a great vibe.
For your hiring, is it just friend to friends, like people you guys know in the space? Is that how you guys have done it?
It's honestly a mix. It's been applications on job sites, things like that. But when it comes to marketing or interns or things like that, yeah, those are typically friends of friends.
Okay. And then one more. So what do you think the future of investing will look like? How will it be different than today?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a very high level to that, I would hope, education is a big part of it, right? So kind of as you've seen investing change in the past 10 years where it was a fee per trade or account minimums, things like that, and those have all kind of waived. It's heading in a stranger direction where you don't really know where it's going to. You have other companies that are doing alternative investing like Masterworks and Art and pieces like that. I think we'll probably see more of that, but I kind of do hope as, this entire space grows and whatnot, that education is a big component of it because while it's great that there's all these great products and all these great credit cards and good points that you can utilize if you really know what you're doing, for the majority of people that don't understand those things, it really becomes a very predatory type market, right? And you want to make sure that as long as education is going with it and people can understand what they're getting into, I think that's what's the most important.
Got it. Yep. And as you know, AI has been the buzzword for the last 6 months. It feels like. Are you guys doing stuff with AI, or where do you see AI impacting?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I think very high levels. We don't want to be one of those companies that's just hopping on the AI wave for the sake of doing it. So my co-founder and I, we sat down and we looked at a few of the features, right, with all these LLM models and all these chat models, and we realized that okay, if we can kind of integrate this into our education module where a teen or an 18 plus user is talking to this and having it explain financial terms in much simpler terms, then it's worth doing. So that's actually something that we have shipped out in our app. So for example, in our app, what we're working on right now is as you take these modules, if you need it to be explained to you in simpler terms or in more diverse terms, or if you need an example, we actually have a built-in a ChatGPT skin on it that just explains it to them. So we are definitely exploring things like that, but like I said, I want to make sure that it's not just a hype thing and more of a practical thing for our users.
Got it. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, some of the stuff it does. Us is we write 150 stories a day and then 1,200 headlines. Making sure that writers aren't using AI, not and phoning it in and figuring all that out. It's very interesting what's going on in this day and age, and then AI does produce a lot of incorrect info as well. So if you just want to phone it in and say you're in school, give me a history of the Civil War, you'll get a lot of incorrect stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anything that I haven't asked you, Allan, that you would like to say to this FinTech audience?
Yeah, so I mean, nothing else at all. Like I said, I appreciate you having me on. I guess, one thing that I would maybe ask of you, Jason, is, as someone who has been in finance for such a long time, do you have any advice for someone like myself or somebody else that's listening that's also, in a similar age to some extent of like, being a 23-year-old or 24-year-old?
Well, first, I know compliments when people are in the in the day-to-day with your sleeves rolled up, compliments aren't easy to take, but it's absolutely amazing what you've built. And on a day I met you and you sent me an email and talked to you after that several times, I knew what you would touch would turn into gold. If it wasn't this one, it'll be something else after. It seems like you're pulling all this, moving all the like a music conductor, pulling all the strings right, and you just have to keep doing it, making sure these people love your product. And maybe it's not just stock trading. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's there's a company, I think the symbol is INST. They're the ones that in schools they like do it's like Blackboard or chalk, like the schools you to log into their software and they power some stuff. Maybe your thing is more of a financial tool that schools can use to teach basic understanding of it, and it becomes more of a platform versus just, hey, I'm going to do the trading. Depending on what you build, I have to play with it again, but with that kind of engagement, it's tremendous, and someone's going to want to gobble you up, but just keep doing what you're doing, absolutely. And if you're raising money, you know where to find me. And I appreciate, Allan, you coming on the RazReport to talk FinTech. We'll have the date somewhere on the screen. Hopefully it's going to be in New York. Hopefully you'll be able to make it to the event and tell your story, and there'll be all the partners, customers, vendors. We try to bring everyone in the space. It's actually kind of how I built Benzinga, going to conferences way back in the early days. So
sweet. Yeah, really appreciate that, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I would love to see you there.
Yep. So, all right, we got Allan Maman on the show. He, worked for Andrew Yang, Bloomberg, Robinhood, and now has his own startup, Bloom, that is kicking ass and taking numbers. Serious numbers. Check it, the growth in the App Store. If you haven't downloaded it, check it out. And look forward to getting an update from you. And just, I can just say, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Jason.